Welcome back to Andi Can Help Live, where we break down the trends and frameworks behind shopping and building your business online. I'm your host, Andy, and today we have a special episode. OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, released an article and accompanying white paper published by the National Bureau of Economic Research that looks at over 1.5 million conversations that users had with ChatGPT and analyzed them by purpose, user demographics, and context for using the tool. They did a fantastic deep dive into the numbers and what they mean in the white paper, and gave some good top-line statistics and punch points for the article audience. Before we get going here, I want to let you know that the show is not sponsored by OpenAI, and the opinions and predictions expressed here are my own. I've read both of these over and have a few thoughts about where we are and where we're going with large language models that I'd like to share with you and break down, as I think that they have huge implications in the world as we see it today and where we're going. I'm linking those resources in the show notes that analyze and give insight into how over 700 million daily users of ChatGPT worldwide are using the large language model in everyday life. This is an amazing insight into how individual end users use AI, and by extension how businesses can better serve those consumers through use of AI. These statistics help to illuminate the black box that ChatGPT and other language models are for everyday people and businesses who sense the value that large language models unlock, but aren't sure how their peers and competitors are leveraging this technology and are therefore hesitant to invest and plan for the arising technology. We're going to dive deep into better understanding the people, purposes, and implications behind ChatGPT's use in the daily life and use of all of us, but focus through the lens of e-commerce. Let's get into it. The article begins speaking of how the technology is leveling the playing field and being used more openly across different demographics, through both personal and professional use. I found a really interesting quote in the beginning of this that I want to unpack. Quote, "This widening adoption underscores our belief that access to AI should be treated as a basic right, a technology that people can access to unlock their potential and shape their future." Unquote. This seems exceptionally rosy for a company that offers a very limited free version use with throttling beyond a handful of questions daily, to an exponentially more expensive paid and API models with rising token costs for the end user, which will drive the cost of access to the platform up and lessen its availability in a free or affordable capacity. This particularly impacts lower income people and smaller organizations, so think your smaller teams and sole proprietors, that are looking for efficient and manageable ways to scale their work. If AI access should be treated as a basic human right, should there be a price tag on the access to that right? It should be widely available to the public if it's a basic right that is to be exercised. This model as it currently stands is at odds with the AI being a basic right, since affordability into supporting a basic right is integral into its widespread accessibility. Recently, the US has announced massive investments into AI funded by our tax dollars and presumably tariffs. But should these investments entitle AI access for the public? Should the price to access ChatGPT be different for US taxpayers compared to users outside the country? The article doesn't go into detail on country usage, but does later remark on that low to mid-income countries use the technology at a 4 times greater pace than high-income countries like the US. Are AI tokens and ChatGPT subscriptions the next thing to have tariffs levied, similar to how H-1B visa working arrangements have been discussed with application fees and tariffs on imported tech labor? I think that we'll get a clearer picture on what we're in for as we decide how we're handling the massive costs that come along with AI. Those costs come in many different shapes, including economic and monetary, with the material and energy costs to run these data centers that support AI, as well as environmental, where their water and energy use threatens the environment and surrounding communities of these data centers. We're seeing instances of this happening in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and other sites where these massive data centers are being installed by Meta, Microsoft, Amazon, and other major AI stakeholders. Residents near these data centers report construction dust, light pollution, and contaminated drinking water in the wake of their installation and running to support AI. Trillions of dollars are expected to be invested over the coming years into these data centers themselves, with the purchase of these buildings building of these buildings, servers, GPUs, and other specialized human resources and software needed to support these AI systems. These investments are in effect holding up portions of the economy, forming a bubble that isn't sustainable, with expectations of a rupture of this bubble coming soon with for some with a lack of widely applicable business use cases at this time, combined with the rising costs on tokens, usage, and compute, and on the other side of AI companies and venture capitalism dollars at work to bridge the gap between AI reality and expectations held for the tech. So these two are, competing with each other and pushing on the bubble and continuing and furthering it. I believe that this puts pressure on smaller companies with less investment resources today to partner with and make initial investments into AI. I'm predicting that we'll have an uneven pop of this bubble, with those capable of weathering the bubble's rupture landing and creating their own ecosystems and micro bubbles of AI supported ecosystems. How close it'll be to some of the fables of AI, such as artificial general intelligence, AGI, and use cases augmenting major parts of the business process is yet to be seen. And I believe widely that depends on the balanced use of resources that are capable of meeting the demand of these next steps in AI. So, i.e., sustainable power, investment capital, balanced compute and resource uses, and things of that nature. While GPU and computing are getting faster, we are still dependent on fossil fuel burning power plants to power these increasingly hungry users of power. Not enough conversation is being committed to how we're supporting the power needs of these centers efficiently and with less environmental impact, including exploring nuclear, solar, and other composite clean energy options that can keep up with the demand. These investments would need to be taken from the power plants all the way through the system to residential, commercial, and industrial zoned areas, including substation upgrades, improving lines, and better outage preventive measures. With the rise of closed and local large language models, there may be smaller models running on residential infrastructure, but consider that models of all sizes contribute to electrical grid strain and uneven energy distribution. I can see a future re-embracing nuclear power by building data centers directly powered by and surrounding remote power stations, carefully planned in place to limit their impact on the general population of an area in terms of different types of pollution, resource competition, etc. With this configuration of data centers, countries can invest in safe and low-cost energy production to power their high-revenue export data from these centers to consumers around the world. As it stands, the data for these demands for AI compute and processing power compete for resources with other business units of the companies that implement them, and ultimately have server space with these centers. There may be more focus with serving AI demand on infrastructure over handling other critical functions like supporting website backends or payment processing. While the companies that host and own the largest stake of their usage can prioritize their own systems and businesses and their resource use, this leaves smaller businesses relying on the infrastructure to fight for the remaining scraps of bandwidth and compute. And while these investments are in balance with the resources of power, water, and human resources, everyone stands to lose. Because of the massive investment that's needed to support not only AI development, but also the other aspects of our economy and society, we may need to take a more nuanced and balanced view on how we approach these technologies. Or are basic rights expected to be premium features to living in a world that's expected to be increasingly more dependent on AI use? More on this later in the article. So which is it? Does the right to AI access fall into the public or private school model of availability? Should we be entitled to use something that is in its current state so detrimental to local and faraway communities? The topic is currently of discussion and only expected to heat up as technology furthers down the road. The study then goes on to talk about work versus non-work use, where in general only 30% of conversations were flagged as work-related. Interestingly, the professional context ChatGPT use in older users is more prevalent and focused to work-related queries, but as I mentioned earlier, decreases dramatically after 66. Neither in the article nor the study cover the use of ABI versus conventional users, so we don't have that insight on if this is the complete picture of how much ChatGPT and OpenAI models are used for work as a percentage overall. But we can assume that a sizable chunk of that 30% are from individuals and small businesses without access to closed LLMs, such as contractors and small teams where data security isn't as high. I am interested to see how OpenAI tries to market its products for use with the freelance and contractor market, especially as its technology improves and costs evolve over time. Another really interesting quote from the article says that ChatGPT helps improve judgment and productivity, especially in knowledge-intensive jobs. And as people discover these and other benefits, usage deepens, with user cohorts increasing their activity over time through improved models and new use case discovery. It's important to state that ChatGPT doesn't replace judgment and productivity in any capacity, but especially in knowledge-intensive jobs. It can be reckless and irresponsible to rely wholly on the outputs of an LLM as gospel and carry out a project. I am excited to see where AI evolves and progresses in the coming years as we navigate these problems and considerations with its use and implementation. Whether it's competing energy, compute, or digital resources, responsible use of large language models or distributing opportunity the right way according to its investment and entitlement, this scene is rapidly changing and is merging into one point as it reaches forward. We will need more and better as we see AI's use come to the center of life and commerce. To read today's article and white paper, you can go to today's episode show notes or blog post on andycanhelp.com. I welcome you to read it yourself and share any feedback or ideas that I spurred in you on how we use ChatGPT and other AI platforms. You can find me on social media platforms like Blue Sky at Andi Can Help. This episode's show music is brought to you by Obnoxious. You can find their music at Spotify and other streaming services. Just search ABNOXIX. Thanks for listening. Please review and share this podcast with friends or colleagues that love learning about technology and what's next for online business. Andi Can Help Live releases episodes every Tuesday discussing strategy, tactics, and getting results for your next initiative. Whether you're a small business or a major brand, Andi can help. See you next time.